What do you get when you have a society that enforces rules against one side and not the other? You end up with one side looking clean and presentable and the other side looking absolutely insane. One of the things that I've highlighted quite often in the past several months or year is that they consistently enforce the rules more strictly against the anti-establishment right than they do against basically any other group. There are certainly conservatives who get away with a lot of things, but there are conspiracy types and, I don't know, just all around weird people with weird opinions. I say weird because I want to encompass people who believe, kind of nonsensical things that don't matter, all the way to the fringe crazy ideas. It's a weird bunch that get banned. Not all of them are weird. Sometimes it's regular old Trump supporters. But what ends up happening is, in our world, in our country, we now look to the right, and what do we see? You know who I absolutely love using as a great example of like a rising personality in the Trump sphere is Will Chamberlain. I don't know if you're familiar with who he is. He's a lawyer. I've had him on my main channel several times. He's just a conservative lawyer. The suit-wearing, run-of-the-mill guy with conservative opinions, supports the president. Nothing too outrageous or extreme. It's like regular old American who supports the president. That's what you get. He's a rising star. You end up with these kind of people, and they look presentable, professional, and they have great arguments. Will's a pretty smart guy. I love using him as an example because some people have called him vanilla yogurt. It's like, that's what you get, okay? What happens on the left when you don't enforce the rules? Well, now you have crazy people running around saying crazy things, and nobody stops it. So the left is beginning to look crazier and crazier, and it's influencing other aspects of the left and even reaching to the highest points of cable television. Take a look at this tweet from the Daily Caller. MSNBC's Katie Tur, a so-called journalist, they put in quotes, calls Ken Vogel's Politico report detailing how Ukrainian government officials coordinated with the DNC and Clinton campaign in 2016 Russian propaganda in what may be one of the most amazing owns. I'm not sure who this man is right here, excuse me, but Katie Tur is talking to him and he mentions that Ukrainian government officials were working with the DNC, and she says, that's Russian propaganda. And he goes, no, it's not, and holds up the report from Politico and says it's Ken Vogel's report, who now works for the New York Times. MSNBC has gotten away with the insanity. Rachel Maddow for years pushing the most insane, alarmist conspiracy nonsense. Listen, man, when Alex Jones comes out and says, people, listen, the cell towers are going to mutate you into an animal hybrid and the interdimensional aliens, people just go like, they laugh. Come on. I know some people end up believing that insane stuff when Alex Jones rants and raves, but most people understand it's entertaining to watch Jones go on the Joe Rogan podcast and start waving his arms and yelling, and you're like, Jones is nuts. Now look, Alex Jones was right about a lot of things. The big problem with Alex Jones is that he stretches things too far. He jumps to conclusions. That's what you would expect from a conspiracy theorist. That's literally what the point is. Jones sees things that are there, real things. Case in point, atrazine, turning frogs into, messing with their endocrine systems. Some people have disputed this. I don't want to get to that point. The point is, he looks at a real report, but then all of a sudden he's like looking at a much bigger conspiracy that's not really there. It doesn't mean he's always wrong, but he's wrong enough. And he's reaped the, to his detriment now. He's been canceled. A lot of the things they accused him of was ridiculous and fake. Never been a big fan of Alex Jones, okay? But I don't think he should be banned. And if you want to play the game that he should, then why isn't Katie Tur? Why isn't Rachel Maddow? Katie Tur on the air, the other day made up a fake quote from Donald Trump. And now they claim, oh, it was a joke. I was just reading a line. That's what Schiff said. But that's not what people see when you say, he said, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to dig up dirt on my political... He never said that. It's not even in there. And that's what they do. Why is it that you can have MSNBC call mainstream political reporting from Politico and the New York Times, and they're going to say it's Russian propaganda? Have you lost it? You are a conspiracy nut, okay? Listen, I understand there are people that like Jones, but let's not throw around labels. I will just say this. Based on our standards, if Alex Jones is banned, why isn't MSNBC shut down too? If InfoWars is out, why isn't MSNBC out? Why do they allow this? Check this out. Paul Krugman, op-ed columnist of the New York Times Opinion. You know what? Maybe there's a good reason Katie Tur thinks New York Times is not credible. Paul Krugman tweeted, starting to look like two possible outcomes. Trump and a number of others end up in jail, or thousands of journalists end up in prison camps. What? Paul Krugman, you know what, man? How is it that Alex Jones is banned and he says the silliest stuff? Animal-human hybrids, mutations from cell towers, interdimensional aliens. But Paul Krugman can actually claim the journalists are going to end up in prison camps. Oh, okay. You know what, man? These people have lost it. I don't understand how we can be at this point where MSNBC can actually claim that mainstream reporting is Russian propaganda. I feel sorry for those who watch MSNBC. I really, really do. And now it brings me to a story from a couple weeks ago. One American News is suing Rachel Maddow and MSNBC over Russian propaganda claim. Alex Jones got sued for, Sandy Hook stuff, and MSNBC is getting sued over Russian propaganda stuff. Two of the biggest criticisms against these two networks. Alex Jones was smeared, and berated over his Sandy Hook comments from years ago. That was like the main justification, along with other. Jones made statements that they claim was like incitement to violence. That he said something about grabbing your battle rifles and getting ready. And Jones really does cross the line with his hyperbole. He's even caught himself a few times. If you watched his stuff after the ban, he has to stop and then try and rephrase and say, I'm metaphorically. Besides the point, Alex Jones was smeared over Sandy Hook. Rachel Maddow has been smeared consistently over her Russian propaganda stuff. Why is she still on the air? It's because asymmetric enforcement exists. Our society will not shut her down, and she caused nothing but she is one of the most divisive and destructive figures in this country. MSNBC. Crystal Ball. That's her real name, Crystal Ball. She had excellent commentary. I really, really do respect her. She was on Bill Maher, and she said, MSNBC has caused real damage to the left. And I'm so happy to hear that. But I'm not surprised that, when I watch Bill Maher's stuff, he gets it right. And that's the next segment I'm going to do. I want to talk about this, though. Crystal Ball, I believe, they've called her like a rising star over at The Hill, but The Hill has done a great job. And she's a rather progressive, it would seem, the way she talks about Bernie and other candidates. But calling out MSNBC is important. The bigger problem I see is that there's not going to be a line drawn in the sand when the left continues to go insane. MSNBC can claim it's Russian propaganda that Ukrainian governments were coordinating with the DNC. It's not. That's Politico. Okay, that's mainstream news reporting. But they live in a world where they refuse to accept the truth when it hits them in the face. The funny thing is they accuse Trump supporters of doing the same thing. And to an extent, for some of these Trump supporters, yeah, they'd be right. There are a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that refuse to accept the news if it goes against their worldview. That's just confirmation bias. It exists. The problem I see is that, as we've known for a while, there is a bias against conservatives. But I think, it also has a lot to do with anti-establishment. Something I've mentioned before. Alex Jones is anti-establishment. He wants to. I don't want to accuse him of what he. I don't want to say what he wants, but Alex Jones talks about the deep state and the government and the establishment and controlling the DNC and the cronies and the crooks and all that stuff. Rachel Maddow is the establishment. So you see how this works. If you are outside the system, they'll come for you. I'll use a good example. Earlier today, I made a point about BuzzFeed defending the reporter in the Carson King story. I'll give you a really good example of how we define who's in and outside of the swamp. Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, he made a joke. You see, a while ago, he tweeted to a female MP that he wouldn't even adult assault her. I gotta be careful about language. He wouldn't even do it. And my understanding is the point he was making is that by even being negative, saying he wouldn't do it, they would claim he said he did. And they have. Well, the media has slammed and smeared him for it. So finally, there was one point recently where he made a joke where he said, people keep, trying to criticize me for saying that he wouldn't do this, but, because of the media pressure, maybe the media pressure will actually, I think he said with enough, okay, let me try and rephrase this. I'm going to kill the joke. I'm sorry. He said that there's been a lot of media pressure over his statement about not raping her, but with enough pressure, maybe he would. Not that he was actually going to do it. He wasn't joking about doing it. He was saying he wouldn't. Then he goes on to say there's not enough beer in the world. The point he was making is that he said he wouldn't do a thing, and the media smeared him for it. So his joke was, I guess they must want him to, right? In the story from Aaron Calvin, the guy who canceled Carson King, if you're not familiar, this guy raised $1 million for charity, and this journalist tried canceling him, but they found negative tweets from him. Long story short, there's two guys. They both said offensive things. Carl Benjamin In the BuzzFeed story, they say that he talked about rape. They don't tell you what his joke was or the context. They don't talk about the media smears. They just say he did it. Aaron Calvin, on the other hand, gets a puff piece where they talk about how he's being harassed by the right and being smeared and how, so that's the point. You get it. If you're in the swamp, you're safe. If you're outside, you're fair game. And that's why Rachel Maddow gets away with this. And that's why people like Paul Krugman believe there's a world where journalists are in prison camps, and why Katie Tur at MSNBC thinks reporting from the Politico is propaganda. They've lost it because no one will tell them enough. And they run defense for each other. Stick around. I got more segments coming up in a few minutes. The next one's great. We're going to talk about Bill Maher. Alt-right Bill Maher, huh? I'll see you in a few minutes.